Hey, good afternoon, everyone. John Hominack with New York Metro Weather, checking back in here to provide an update on the winter storm, which is evolving throughout the United States and will affect the Northeast during the middle and end of the week, really from Wednesday into Thursday. And a lot has changed since our last update last night. We alluded to some of the things that might transpire, some of the trends that we might see and observe, and we are in the process of observing those now. So let's break this down real quick and kind of give you guys a general outlook as to what we are expecting and the changes we've made to our forecast and also why we've made those changes. So we're looking at the mid-levels of the atmosphere here, and this is basically an easy way to look at where the disturbances are and where the energy is in the atmosphere. So what we're looking at here is the forecast for this afternoon with a big upper level trough over the central United States. That's going to be the system that eventually moves into the Mississippi Valley and then into the Northeast states tomorrow, Wednesday, into Thursday. Some things have changed here, and while they might seem very small, they might seem insignificant, they are not. And so what we want to look at here is just the changes. So here's the runs here's what the Ensemble was showing yesterday. Here's what it's showing today. And you can see that things are a little bit more amplified with this system overall. And that small change, to give you an idea how sensitive it is, small changes like that can lead to big changes down the road with how the storm evolves. So this system is eventually going to move over to the east here. You can see it's going to track into the Ohio Valley and eventually towards the mid-Atlantic states. But again, watch these height lines very carefully here, because the trend since yesterday, if we look at yesterday's model run, just slightly less amplified. These height lines are a little bit lower. And here this afternoon, you can see they're a little bit higher. The storm itself, a little more condensed. And what that means is that the storm system is going to track a little bit further north and west than we had thought it was going to as of yesterday. Here is the pressure forecast, and we talked about yesterday how important this high pressure was to the north of the storm. Now, that is still there, and that's one of the major points of contention with this forecast is how this battle evolves between the low pressure coming up the coast and the high pressure which is sitting in southeast Canada. Over the last 24 hours since we recorded a video yesterday, the trends again have been very slight, very slow and steady, but they are for this system to track a little further north and win that battle just a little bit more with this high pressure as it moves up the coast. So that's something we're watching really closely as well, and those trends have been very consistent over the last 24 hours. And here's a good example of it. So what we're looking at here is an Ensemble forecast. There's 51 members. Each of these little individual L's are showing you a forecast for where the center of low pressure is going to be with this storm system on Thursday morning, early Thursday morning. And you can see a lot of them are now clustered inland over parts of Maryland and Delaware, which is far from a classic track for snow in New York. But even more so, if we want to compare this to what it looked like yesterday, here's where these ensembles were yesterday. And you can see that what's really happened is there has been a condensed track back to the west. So things are shifting from this general location westward to this general location. And then once the storm comes up the coast towards the New Jersey coast, let's take another look at the difference between what we were looking at yesterday and today. And you can see that there's many more members that are tucking this storm in, really close to the coast of New Jersey. And that's going to take a snow band that was expected to be in northern New Jersey and southeast New York yesterday. And as the storm tracks further west, it's going to push that band a little further north and west with it. And so in a basic sense, these are some of the reasons why we're seeing some shifts in the forecast. So let's take a look at the NAM model. We're getting into the higher resolution models as we get closer, and let's take a look at the forecast. So here's our low pressure system coming up the coast now. This is forecasted for Wednesday afternoon and early evening. And you can see snow beginning throughout northern New Jersey and New York City, but the surface low is really in a position close to Ocean City, Maryland at this time. But we mentioned that things had ticked further west, and you'll notice it on this map. It's really not hard to see. The big swath of snow here is over central Pennsylvania. And this system is shooting precipitation back all the way back into central Pennsylvania and parts of Ohio. As the storm does move closer to the area off the coast of Cape May, precipitation is starting to shift towards northern New Jersey and New York. Likely a few inches of snow already at this time as we move past midnight on Thursday. But again, the north and west track is now leading to a complication where warm air is moving into the atmosphere and causing some sleet and mixed precipitation instead of snow. And then again, as we look into the early morning hours of Thursday, we see that sleet has now moved into the New York City area, and that banding of heavy snowfall is now further north, up in areas like Binghamton and Scranton, north central PA. Let's compare this to what we were looking at yesterday at this time, and you'll see the difference. Yesterday at this time, the surface low was projected to be further south, but more importantly, the stronger high pressure and a more compressed system in general was leading to bands of heavy snow over eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and the New York City metro. And as we look at the most recent model runs, again, I'll flip back. Oh, sorry, that took me way out of contention here. Let's go back to this specific frame. Here's where we were yesterday. And then if we look at the most recent model runs, you can see the shift to the north and west. And it's really, I mean, listen, folks, this is not a tremendous shift, but this is what we talk about with the sensitivity to the forecast. Just a small push to the north and west, 50, 75 mile change makes such a huge difference. And I'll flip back and forth again to illustrate. Here's yesterday's model run showing a ton of snow in New York. And then here's today's showing, still a significant snowfall, but the very, very heavy stuff all the way further north into parts of northeast PA and central New York. One of the reasons for that is that forecast models are showing the warmer scenario where we are really on a borderline situation for snowflakes to make it to the ground. So after a thump of heavy snow and bands of heavy snow from Wednesday evening into Thursday morning, because the storm system is further north and west, we're looking at about 3,000 to 5,000 feet above the surface, temperatures very close to freezing. And so what happens there is, as a snowflake falls from the cloud, it goes through a layer of air that is warm. And so if it's warm enough to melt the snowflake, you cannot reproduce a snowflake again. It has to be produced in the cloud. So once it melts on the way down, it's over for snow. And so what the models are showing is sleet or ice pellets, wintry mixed precipitation hitting the ground, basically in the form of a melted snowflake. And that's really what that north and west track has done, is it has introduced the possibility of mixing and less support for very heavy snow in the New York City area. And here's a zoomed in view of just that. So let's go piece by piece here. We'll start at 6 and 7 o'clock p.m. on Wednesday. Heavy snow moves into the area. You can see it'll be at least several hours of heavy snow, taking us to around 10 o'clock p.m. on Wednesday night. And that's when that warmer air begins to appear in southeast PA and central New Jersey. And that slowly and gradually creeps up closer to the New York City area as we move closer to midnight on Wednesday. And then from midnight into the early morning hours of Thursday, that warmer air aloft, 5,000 feet up, continues to melt those snowflakes on the way down, and that really chops into the snowfall totals that were being projected yesterday. What eventually happens as the storm begins to pull away, though, by 4 or 5 o'clock a.m. on Thursday, is we flip back to snow, and we could see a couple more inches of snowfall as the storm begins to pull away through Thursday morning and perhaps early afternoon. And again, one more thing that I think is important to note is that even though we've seen a trend to the north and west, and there is support and reasoning for that trend to the north and west, that doesn't necessarily mean that this is set in stone. And I want to illustrate this here with the different positionings of these low pressure areas. Each individual ensemble is making a projection here, and this is a pretty large spread. While we do have a cluster here close to the New Jersey coast, there are several that are further east and a handful that are even further east than that. And getting a storm to shift from here back here would make another huge change to the forecast. It would make things very difficult and switch things back colder and snowier. That is on the table. That is within the envelope of possibilities. However, from a forecasting perspective, meteorology is really about being ahead of the trends. We use models as guidance, and we want to be ahead of what the trends are going to show. And so right now, the evidence is strong that the trend is to the north and west, and for a slightly warmer scenario in the New York City area where the bands of really heavy snow end up further inland in parts of PA and southeast New York. So that's where we stand right now, and accordingly we have updated our snowfall forecast. We have moved the 12 plus area back to the north and west. We have kept the New York City area in the 6 to 12 region, leaning towards the lower end of that, probably closer to 6 to 8 or 6 to 10. And south of New York City, where that sleet and mixing is going to be more prevalent, we still have the 3 to 6 and 1 to 3 inch contours. We've also introduced a 15 inch plus possibility in parts of northeast Pennsylvania, where we think that those bands of heavy snow are going to be very, very prevalent throughout the storm. And again, really what we have done is shifted the axis of heavy snow from this region here in northern New Jersey and New York back to the west about 50 to 75 miles over parts of northwest New Jersey, northeast PA, and southeast New York. So stay tuned for more. We have a lot more coming your way today. There's going to be further updates. There's going to be changes, and we're going to work through all of it with you and kind of, try to provide as much transparency as we possibly can with the forecast as we draw closer to this storm system. For now, take care. Have a good Tuesday afternoon. We'll talk to you guys very soon.